Lexi Mills is a multi-awarded winning digital marketing expert specializing in integrating PR and SEO at both a strategic and tactic level. Her research work focuses on the opportunities, ethics, and risk of machine learning and AI within the sector of internet search. Lexi combines technical search algorithm knowledge and psychology to create data-driven, measurable communication strategies that maximize influence on human behavior. She applies this to external and internal communication strategies. She has been part of core team responsible for the communications, marketing, and investment strategies of clients and agencies for over 8 years. She focuses on e-commerce, music, and technology sectors, working with startups, SMEs, and big brands across the US, UK, Europe, and African marketers in both the B2B and B2C environment. So let's talk about the digital storytelling and future marketing. Stories have involved audience across the world. As kids, we love to listen to stories of kings and queens, of fairies and ghosts, of jungles, superheroes and monsters. In fact, anything that could feed our little imagination. Then we grow up to watch bigger stories on celluloid and read about real-life heroes in our school history books. Brands have begun to realize this, and in communications, advertising, as we know of this, undergoing a massive transformation, especially in this digital age. The product is taking a backstage while story forms the main protagonist. To tell us more on digital storytelling and future marketing, we have Ms. Lexi Mills, Managing Partner, with us. Ms. Lexi Mills, our digital marketers are waiting for your presentation.
Hello, and thank you very much for joining. I'm Lexi Mills, and today, okay, great. So I'll be talking about digital storytelling and the future of marketing. And I'm going to begin by looking a little bit at AI and machine learning, because artificial intelligence and machine learning is actually changing a lot of the ways in which we reach stories, but also the way we receive them and the way they're made. Then I want to talk to you a little bit about how do we get clients into signing off interesting and exciting stories, because we can come up with the best strategies to communicate them and the best stories, but if we can't get someone to sign off on letting us do them, they don't get to live. And then finally, we're going to talk about getting ready for the future. What do we need to be thinking about to not just be ready for today and tomorrow, but maybe next year and the end of this year? And throughout the presentation, I'm going to weave in a bunch of tactics and strategies with a selection of case studies. Now, my job has largely been to get links and coverage from places like this for a real wide variety of clients. So they go from big brands that you'll know like HTC and Red Bull all the way through to much smaller startups across such a weird set of sectors. You know, a lot of people end up very focused in whether it's medical or tech or business, but my career has always meant that I'm working across many sectors. So I'm going to try and show you some tactics that work no matter what sector you're working in. So whether you're in medical, whether you're doing business or travel, all of these tactics will be relevant to you. So let's get started. Let's have a chat about AI and machine learning. Now, I got interested in this a little while ago because I was starting to grow my business and it was just me to begin with. And I looked at SEO agencies and PR agencies, and the way that they grew their businesses didn't really help me. It wasn't similar to the way I worked. But then when I looked at publishing, I realized actually they're growing their industries and managing the same things I was at reduced time, but they needed the same skill sets that I needed for my type of work. And I knew that they had less people, less time, but they had technology behind them. And this technology was helping them to overcome the same challenges I was facing. And this is because they were using artificial intelligence to help them with multiple of things, to recommend what content they should write about, to automate their workflow. How do they manage that instead of having a person do it full time? And looking at how they optimize their content and how they even find stories. You know, it's not just about working out what to cover and what's going to work best or what's best for your content strategy, but also how do you uncover a story? And this is happening across most organizations to some degree now. And I had two plans. I was either going to mimic what they were doing in my business, I was going to find a way to hack what they were doing to help me get coverage, build links, and build great content. So I asked a bunch of journalists, do you think editorial has become more tied to revenue and traffic in the last 10 years? Because this felt very relevant. And one of them said that actually it is, and Amazon is a key factor for them. Some publications don't cover products that aren't highly rated on Amazon. This means that they're using technology to analyze what is coming up in Amazon and what is at the very top of it, and they're feeding that in to what they're thinking about covering and correlating the two. So this means if we're doing any kind of product-based promotion or content marketing, our first port of call for many instances should be to check how these products are being reviewed on Amazon. Whereas previously we used to do this the other way around. We'd get a lot of coverage, do some content marketing, and then we'd get the reviews. But now we have to invert that process. So if you were doing any kind of product-based PR or promotion, reviews are going to be more important than ever before. And I think we're going to see this trend grow across multiple of sites. Another journalist said to me, traffic pays the bills. So that means you might cover something clickbaity that you'd prefer to ignore. And we see this a lot. In past times, we had to find a journalist that wanted our story, that wanted our piece of content and was excited about it. Whereas now, they know that they have to do things to keep the clicks coming through to their websites. In fact, they're not that different to us as content marketers. Their objectives are very similar. So this means that we need to be thinking about what is clickbaity. And I'm not saying that we have to create clickbait, but we have to be aware that when we're trying to get coverage or promotion, that we're fighting against clickbaity titles. Another journalist said to me, yes, it's an uncomfortable situation, but we all want to have a job, so publishing is very much tied to revenue. And a food tech company, tech writer said to me that traffic is the main driver, and so clickbait articles are often required. And we see this in the AI recommendations. This is what the artificial intelligence is looking for. Yes, it's looking for unique topics, but it's very much isolating topics that are clickbaity, things that are trending across Twitter, across different platforms. And we don't actually need AI to tell us what is clickbaity. We can just take a look at top trending items across a couple of news publications. I always check the Daily Mail. It may not be the most sophisticated form of news reporting, but it certainly covers a lot of topics, and certainly the ones that are clickbaity. So you don't need artificial intelligence in the same way that a lot of publications have. You can just look at the Daily Mail and look at their trending items. You can also look at Twitter trending items, and this is one of the first things I do every day to keep on top of what I know journalists are going to be looking for. And in many publications, over 50% of the content they publish is directed by AI. This means 50% has to be linked to some of these terms that the artificial intelligence is telling them about in order to have a chance of being covered. So it's really worth our while checking that out. And we see this when we look at a publication like BuzzFeed. It's very much about jumping on trending terms extremely fast. So instead of spending a lot of time creating one big piece of content, we actually need to start thinking about being more agile and how can we be more like BuzzFeed and very responsive so that we can get into this 50% of content that's directed by the AI. But there are some things that are going to come up in clickbaity type subjects like seasonal trends that we don't need anything to tell us about. We know the seasons, they happen year in, year out. And this is something that I thought about a lot over Christmas a few years ago. I was working on a campaign and I had this idea, actually even much earlier, and I tried to sell it to a client and they wouldn't sell it off. I wouldn't sign it off. And then at the end of, not last year, the year before, I got a client to sign off on it. And I was really excited because you see, I had noticed for several years running that at Christmas time, there's always a whole stream of articles about what Christmas presents to buy and which Christmas presents aren't liked, and how many Christmas presents end up on eBay and resold on other sites. And year in, year out, I'd seen this trend emerging, and it was clearly connected to a season. So we went out and we built a web page for a price comparison site looking at Christmas confessions. So we did a big survey and we found out how much was going to be spent on unwanted Christmas gifts. who gives the worst Christmas gifts? Is it boys? Is it girls? Is it moms? Is it uncles? Is it aunts? And we put this page together. And I was really excited because I'd wanted to do it for so long, but I also didn't want it to fail. And you see, when you're trend jumping like this, it's very risky when you're doing it in isolation, because the problem with doing this AI-driven content topic strategy is that other people are doing it too. So if you do it in isolation, you have a much higher risk of it failing. And I didn't want all my eggs in one basket. I really wanted this subject to really work for the client. So then I got to thinking. I'd come up with this campaign around September, and I was like, you know what? Halloween's coming up. We could probably run a very similar story. And so we made this page for the client, which was looking at how much money was going to be spent on jack-lanterns on Halloween. And we did the exact same formula we had done for the Christmas page. We had built out all the figures, we laid it out the same, and we went out to the press with it. And we got some good pieces of coverage and some links and traffic through to the client's site. And I wasn't looking for anything explosive. What I was looking to do was find out what publications like to cover a story like this, a story that's structured like this. And I asked the journalists, what do you like about the page? What could we adapt? What could we evolve? So then when it came to Thanksgiving, I already knew a list of journalists that like this kind of content. So I thought we'll make another page. And we worked out how much Americans were going to spend on Thanksgiving, which is a lot of money on turkeys across the whole US. And we designed the page very similar to the Halloween one, but we tweaked it according to the journalist feedback. Then we sent the details to all the journalists that covered the Halloween page, and we found a few more that wanted to cover this. And again, we got a bunch of coverage. But what I'd really done at this point is line up a whole load of publications that I knew wanted to cover this Christmas Confessions campaign. And that was the most exciting part of this, you see, because before this campaign even launched, I'd essentially test run it by rolling out smaller ones across different seasonal aspects. And by this point, journalists expected us to be producing this type of content, which meant they were coming to us to get the information because they knew it would be coming, and we had a huge list of media to go to. So when we launched, we picked up quite a few good pieces, and it was exciting, but I wasn't that happy. I mean, it was 3 pieces initially, and I was like, that's not really what I'm looking for. But there's always a tipping piece of coverage. When you are doing any kind of promotion of a big piece of content, there will always be a tipping piece, and it's really important to keep promoting it until you get that. It's really easy to say, oh, I've tried for 2 days, nobody wants it, or this is the most we're going to get. But from my experience, it takes sometimes up to 2 weeks to get this tipping piece. And for us, it was a piece in the USA Today. And in fact, we pushed so hard, we ended up getting 2 pieces in USA Today. And that meant that triggered a whole snowball effect. And we ended up getting over 69 pieces of coverage. But this wasn't just about the success of pushing for that tipping piece. It was all the work that was done before. And it was understanding that artificial intelligence was going to be telling journalists to cover these seasonal events, and we were giving them unique content to do that with. But I want to raise another aspect here. USA Today doesn't very often give followed links. It gives citations, so it will say the brand name. And as SEOs and marketeers, we've been taught for many years to chase followed links. But actually, no-follow links have a huge value, and we shouldn't blacklist publications that don't give followed links or only give citations, because those 2 pieces in the USA Today were critical to us getting those 69 pieces thereafter, most of which linked. And this is something that I think if you take this away and you really think about it and you start to apply it, you will get more links. And yes, you will have some clients come to you and say, but we didn't get a link from that big publication. And that's always a tough conversation, but it's really important to let the clients know that that big publication helped you get all the other links, and in fact, you wouldn't have got them without it. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about another sector of AI. We've talked about how artificial intelligence can help you choose a story and how you use it, but actually artificial intelligence is now writing AI stories. So the Associated Press is getting machines and built an algorithm that can auto-generate stories. and Reuters is using this too now. And this type of automated coverage is allowing them to produce 12 times the amount of stories in business and finance sectors than ever before. And this graph on the left here actually shows you how much money it's making them. It's getting them clicks, it's generating them revenue. So this is something that we can expect to scale over time. Which means we need to learn to pitch both humans and machines now. It's not just about trying to get a journalist engaged. We have to start thinking about structuring our outreach and our PR work so that we get the machines engaged and they know what we're putting out. And one of the easiest ways to do that at this point in time is through newswires. I have a preference for PR Newswire and Business Wire, and just because I found them to be quite reliable and the way they work and the type of sites they syndicate to are very strong. Some newswires work a lot more like a mail merge, so they don't actually fire the message straight through to a news desk. It goes into an inbox. And if you're using a wire that does that, you really should just use mail merge, because a lot of those emails do still get through. And this means there is actually a new value to mail merge in light of AI-generated coverage, because if the AI is drawing from emails to the news at addresses and wires, we need to start thinking about doing more emails that way. But the important thing is you don't mail merge to a specific journalist. It has to be to the news at address. So news at the Telegraph, news at USA Today, news at The Guardian. If you send it to an individual journalist in a mass mail, you're not going to make many friends and you're unlikely to get much coverage. And at the moment, we find that the AI-generated coverage is focused on business and finance media. But what we really want to think about is, how's this going to evolve? What's the next stage? Is it going to expand doing more coverage of those sectors, or is it going to expand into a new one? And I think realistically, it's going to be a mixture of both. Because at the moment, the AI drawing from emails to the news at address is actually just an automation of what was a manual process for a very long time. A journalist sitting at a computer, getting emails through to the news at address, and picking which ones to send to other journalists to write. Now they have a machine doing it. So let's think a little bit more about what the machines could do next. And with this in mind, I'm reminded of an infographic I was promoting a few years ago. It was about blood diamonds. So this is diamonds that have unethical sources. And I was really struggling to get any coverage for this piece of content that we had made. And I was going to all the nationals, I was going to a mixture of journalists and news desks and not getting very far. And then I decided I'm going to go local because it covered Zimbabwe. So I took it to a couple of local Zimbabwean publications. And then I showed the articles that got published in the Zimbabwean to the Diamond News, which is a trade publication for the diamond sector. After that, I showed the Diamond News article to the New York Times. And that's how we ended up getting a link and a mention in the New York Times for this piece of content. And what I learned when I was promoting this is that journalists take their influence, yes, from what's trending, but they also take their influence from trade publications. And this is really helpful when we're thinking about how AI will evolve, because what we'll find is that AI is trusting certain types of news, business and finance, because it's somewhat regulated. It will also trust trade publications because it's been vetted, that content has been checked by someone. So it seems likely to me that this currently manual process of using trade to influence national media will actually be something that journalists will automate, which means trade publications will be more valuable than ever before. And we need to start thinking about how we build relationships with them because it will help us get into these AI-generated funnels in the future. So we've had a little look at AI and machine learning and what that means to the future of our storytelling and our communication of our stories. Let's have a little talk about how to get clients to sign things off, because that's often tough. When I'm thinking about getting clients to sign ideas off, I like to think of it like frogs. There's an old wives' tale that if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump straight out. But if you put it in cold water and slowly turn the heat up, it won't jump out. What we often do with clients is we throw them straight into a boiling pot and they jump out and say, nope, I don't want to do that big campaign, that big piece of research that you know will make a great story. What we need to do is start them off in cold water, and I want to show you how I do that. So I was working with a client called Syndicate Room, and they are a funding platform for investors and for businesses to get investment. And they weren't sure about working with agencies, so I wanted to make sure that everything we did was really unstressful for them and didn't push them too far too soon. Now, we have a huge media database that we work with, so when I started working with them, I looked at all the publications that we had there and started to isolate the ones that I thought would be most interested in their business. And I knew that there was a strong correlation between investment and search, because a journalist had sent me these. Now, what you see in these graphs, they are terms like drones or blockchain, and it's looking at VC, so venture capitalist deal volumes in relation to internet search volume. And they run almost parallel. So this told me that what I needed to do, if I was trying to find trending subjects within the area of finance, which my client was in, I should be looking at what's trending on Google and what's trending on the stock markets. So that's when I downloaded an app called Editorial, and I started to watch what was trending up. And I put these, the key terms of these businesses into Google Trends, and what I was looking for is things that were increasing in interest in internet search volume, not ones that are static. Because if it's increasing in interest in search volume, that means the VC deals were going to increase, and it means that journalists are going to want to jump on that. After doing that, I went to our journalist consulting board. Now, this is a board of journalists that we work with, and we send them a bunch of ideas and they give us direct feedback so that we know that what we're doing is ready for the media. So we sent them this list of terms that we thought were going to be interesting to finance media. They told us which ones were of most interest to them. Then we got some finance experts to go through them and give us some information on these terms. We then went about and we drafted some articles based on these terms and unique research from the academics. And then we put them past our media experts who reviewed them. And then we put them out using a mixture of tools. So we used a mixture of BuzzStream, which is a CRM, a Gorkana, Response Source, and Cision tools to help us promote these articles to media. Now, the trick when you're pitching a list of very high-end articles is to pitch at least 3 ideas at the same time with bullet points about the article. I tend not to send the full article in one go. We find that we get more interest and more pickup if we don't do that. But it's also very important to understand that when you're sending similar emails out, Google spam filters have gotten really strict lately. And you want to make sure that your emails are actually getting through. So it's important to write very unique emails to each journalist or each editor when you're sending these emails out. Now, after we did this, we got a bunch of these articles placed. And the great thing about it, here's an example one, is that the client got to see all the content. They could control it. They could pick the topics. We felt confident that they were going to work because we'd checked it with journalists and we'd used a little bit of our knowledge about artificial intelligence. But there wasn't a lot of risk to the client, to a journalist writing something that might be bad. So what we were doing is building trust. And after we built that trust, we thought, right, let's try something a little bit more exciting. So we didn't push them too far, we took them to one step. And the way I put it to the team is we have a half-cooked frog, so let's do something more exciting. Now, I could have gone for gold and had come up with a big creative campaign. But I knew that this client had not had a great experience in the past, so it was important to still keep them calm and comfortable with what we were working on. So I thought, let's not do a big brand new campaign. Let's go for silver instead of gold. And this is because I knew that they had some old content. And an old idea, improved or done better, is often safer and less risky than a completely new idea. So that's what I was looking for. So I went into our Dropbox and I had a look at all their old content that they had sent me, and we found a piece which was called The Rise of the Growth Hunters, which was a piece of research about early stage investment. And we updated this content. So we did new research, but the format for it was very much the same. It was something that the client had been familiar with in the past. But when I put this idea forward to the client, I didn't say, we definitely want to do this. I said, will you consider letting us update this? I often find if I say to a client, will you consider something, and I give them a few days to think it through, you get more positive outcomes than if you try and push them for a yes straight away on that one phone call, that one email. Whilst they were thinking about it, we gave them some time to boil on it and think. We took it to our journalist consulting board and said how many people would be interested in covering this. And seeking feedback before you build out an idea from more than 2 journalists will massively increase your success rate. Because if more than 2 journalists don't want to cover it, you have to rethink your idea. And they will give you feedback about what more they would like in it. So this gave us a little bit more understanding of how we needed to update this content. And the great thing about going to journalists and getting feedback is that clients don't have to believe you. They can believe the feedback from the journalists or the other specialists. And we find this really helpful. And we send that feedback often over to clients without us having to push the idea forward. We're just gently nudging them. And the client signed it off, which was great. So we started building out the content. And the best part was they had loads of coverage from this a bit of coverage from this piece of content a few years ago. So I looked at that coverage in Google, and I want to show you something here. You'll see that there are related subjects in the sidebar on Google, such as startup companies, finances, investors. And I started clicking through all these tabs, looking at what other publications were covering these subjects, and that helped me build a target list for this new piece of content. I also went into Corkana, which is a media database, and we looked at all the tags and built out a bigger press list. And the key thing here is that we weren't trying to win on round 1 when we were going out to journalists. We went out, told them it was coming, went out when it went live, and followed up with them. And you can actually do this automatically with a program called BuzzStream. It's a CRM, and it has something called sequences, which allows you to auto-send emails. And you can say, if they reply, send this. If they don't reply, send that. So it's not that you have to keep tabs on who you've contacted when and what you need to do next. There's great software to help with this. And Gmail has an add-on called Boomerang, which is also incredibly helpful for doing this as well. We also put this piece of content out on a newswire because, as I said before, a lot of publications are taking their content from newswires into the AI. So we put it out on a newswire, and we ended up getting over 19 media outlets to cover it. We got 17 links for it, and we had an average domain authority of around 47. Now that might sound quite low to you, but that's because trade publications have quite low domain authorities. But remember, I was saying earlier that trade are going to be really important to the future of artificial intelligence generated coverage. So with that in mind, we knew we had to go to the trade publications. And it's not all about the biggest and the best. Yes, we all love to get huge links and have our stories told by national media, but actually trade media converts really highly. So it's not just that it's highly relevant and you get good links, you actually get good conversions from this. And I've seen this across multiple sectors when promoting different stories. Now I want to finish off by talking to you a little bit about getting ready for the future. Now that we've talked about AI and machine learning and how to talk to clients and signing off different story ideas. Now we know that images are critical. In fact, 91% of consumers now prefer interactive or visual content over traditional text-based content, which means we need to find ways to make really good images really quickly. Now, we don't all have a big photo studio in our office, but you don't need a big photo studio. You just need an area you can take pictures, because generating hand-drawn graphics can actually take a long time and a photo can be much quicker. We have a small studio set up in our office, and it means that this is the team you can see here in the image. The team can set up quick shoots and come up with ideas really quickly and check them out, test them out really fast. And here are a couple of images that we just took on an afternoon, and they all look highly professional, but it was because we had the right lighting in the right room, and it was easy for the team to have the idea, go out and trial it. And we managed to generate some really wonderful images that we don't just use for the stories we're telling for our clients to the press, but we use them, as you can see here, in social media, email marketing, and even when promoting things to bloggers and social media influencers. But if we don't find ways to generate good images quickly, you're going to restrict your ability to perform highly. Now you can get photo tents very cheaply that just pop up, and you can put your products in them and set up photos of photo shoots that give images of this quality on a very, very low budget. We also need to start thinking about how visual searches can make or break stereotypes. Because if we're going to be doing more visual-based search, and we're seeing that in all the statistics, we need to think about how do our brands look? What's their story if it's only told through images? And I want to show you what I mean by that. If you search plumber job, all you see are images of men. If you look at pilot job, again, the majority of the images are men. And nurses' jobs, majority of the people in these images are women. These industries, their story is telling a gender-biased story. It's saying that women are mainly nurses and men are mainly pilots. And this can be true for our clients too. If we put in our client's name and click images, we'll often find that, oh, that doesn't look very welcoming to a woman, or that doesn't look very diverse. And we need to start thinking about this as we start to craft our client stories online in light of the increased image search. Now, consumers expect speed and quality, and we need to find ways to lower that barrier to doing it. And we've already spoken about the importance of doing that by having ease of access to take good images and upload them online for our clients. But when I was working with HTC, we made this solid gold phone, and we told a story about making, the most indulgent, expensive phone around, and it got a lot of coverage. And when I was working with bathrooms.com, we made this small little baby bath, and we put it up on their website for sale, and we've had great images with it, which were fairly easy to do at the time because they were made in CGI. And we promoted it out, and we were telling a story about the client getting involved in the royal wedding and all the royal birth excitement. But it involved making something. And here's an image of it being delivered to the hospital, which is kind of fun. And most recently, I made a robotic handbag, which you can see here, which opens and closes according to peak spending times. And we got it made by a great designer, and we got a lot of coverage. In fact, over 66 inbound links. But the thing that all of these campaigns had in common is that I had to make something, physically make something, in order to get the media's attention. And this is something that's not going to change. We need to start thinking about how do we structure our working spaces to be able to come up with ideas that don't just live online, but maybe are born offline and resonate online. And to me, that means that you probably need some kind of workspace. It's not just about having a photo studio. You need an area where you can put these kind of products together or these kind of ideas. Because if we only think online, you will struggle to create the amount of influence that you need going forward. We have such a digital overload in modern day, and it's hard to cut through that, and we need to give ourselves every opportunity to do so. So I would highly recommend starting to think about how can you make products offline, photograph them, make pages for them and promote those out. Because once you have something solid, you can use that across all platforms of communication, and that becomes really highly valuable. But this won't happen if you have to rent a studio space in order to sit and brainstorm these ideas. Now I want to conclude by talking about targeting the ecosystem in which new products live. This is a gentleman called Brian Johnson, and he's inventing some groundbreaking technology to treat neurological diseases. Essentially, he wants to put chips in our brains to do that. Now that really means he's making people into cyborgs. But when we look at what a cyborg looks like online, that looks kind of scary. We don't want to be that. But when we look at the definition of cyborg, we realize it's actually just a mixture of organic and mechanical matter. Well, we have that already. We have hearing aids, we have pacemakers, but that isn't showing up in search results. And that means that if we don't start to adapt these wider ecosystem results, we run the risk of not adopting life-saving and life-changing technologies. And as marketeers, our job is going to be to start to think about the ecosystem of searches that may not create direct click-throughs for our clients, but will create perceptions about whether they even want our products in the future. And that means online marketing skills will play a crucial role in the advancement of human technology and wellness, which is pretty exciting because until now we've been marketeers, but now we're going to be digital doctors as well. So we've had a look at AI and machine learning, talking clients into signing off stories, and how we get ready to tell stories in the future. And I want to leave you with 3 thoughts. Boil your frog slowly when you're pitching clients to ideas. You don't always have to tell the biggest, most grandest story. A smaller story often works better. And be kind. Be kind at all times to your audience and to your teams, and hire kind people. Because doctors take medical oaths. The advertising industry and the journalism industry have codes of conduct that govern how they work and how they behave, and so does the PR industry. But the SEO industry has none of these. The whole internet is being crafted based on our decisions and the algorithms. And we want to create an internet that we're proud of and we can look back on and say, yeah, I was a part of building that knowledge base. And as a search professionals, you have the ability to make or break stereotypes, and that's a pretty powerful thing. And SEO will play a crucial role in helping others, often before they know they need it in the future. So we need to start from the right place. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks for the presentation, Ms. Lexi Mills. Thanks for your nice and very elaborate presentation done here. We have some sort of questions raised from the audience side, so you wish to answer those questions. The question raised by Rich. A question raised by Rich Winey. What is the future scope of the digital marketing industry?
I think it's huge. We always thought we were marketeers, but the skills that we're using to understand marketing are actually skills to understand people. And understanding people and knowing them better than they know themselves, well, that means that we could very easily end up being insight professionals for medical issues. So I've been doing a lot of research, and I found that there are a lot of good evidence to show that search technology can actually diagnose illness. For example, Microsoft has used to diagnose cancer in our search queries, and things like our ad tech. You can use your presence before you even know your presence. And that's been documented for 5 years. But we're not applying it in that area yet. But I think certainly in the future.
Fine. We have a next question from Ms. Monica. So what are the elements of great storytelling marketing?
Honestly, tell your friends about what you're working on. And if they're interested and you're genuinely excited to tell them the story that you're telling for a client, then you know you're onto a good story. We often get so wrapped up in creating something for a client that we forget to tell something that we would be interested in. And I think a good management technique is to find out what your team care about. When I'm hiring, I want to know that you've got a weird interest. Are you interested in giant snakes? Do you love cake? Do you travel to certain places? But your personal passions will help you create insightful content. And you need to meet the audience. If you don't meet the audience, don't use your client's product, you won't tell great stories. But when you meet the audience, it's always just present them. My client who used the sculptures were already in a block of stone, and he was just carving them out. All the answers are within your client. You've just got to carve them out. And it's really interesting, and maybe you just roll out. And you're looking for something that interests you. That is the most important.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. And next we have the previous speaker, Tracy Repchuk, and she asked about when artificial intelligence is involved with content, is it article spamming or creating pure new content based on a theme? How is that happening?
Very, very good question. I'm sure there is AI doing content spinning, but that wasn't the AI I was referring to. The AI is actually doing the job of journalists. So it's scanning emails that are coming in to publication, finding subjects and automatically pulling articles together and then filling in the gaps in between them to make them readable. And they've been, I know that the AP in America has been working on their algorithm for about 3-4 years to fine tune this. And so they are brand new articles being generated, absolutely brand new, not designed to be spun out. Of course, a lot of publications take their news from the AP and from Reuters, so they will spread far further than just those publications. But that not AI that's been happening.
Okay. And next we have the same questions raised by Tracy. Is the campaign or pages on their site or blog? Where are these located?
You can put them in many places. I try and find a reason to put them in several. You need to start from a UX perspective. Where would someone naturally look, or where would this naturally fit? So for the campaign pages for bathrooms.com, we would make a product page if we were doing a fake product, make a normal product page, surface it on the category page. You might even surface it in a little smart box on the home page just for a few days, and we'd probably write a blog about the project, and in some cases we will write a press release and put that on the press center, and if relevant we might put it under a news, research or insight section as well. I like to have several bits of content related to the campaign in several places, because when I find that I can ask, I can put hundreds of links into my pitch to journalists, and people will read each unique link on the page. So if I have 2 links, one to the blog and one to the category page, you've got 2 unique links. But if you only
Okay, we have the next question from Ms. Monica. What are some great tips for storytelling?
I like to read children's books. Children's books have all the elements of an engaging story, and I'm sure many of you have children or nieces and nephews. I have a goddaughter. Keeping children engaged is really hard. And anything that can keep a child engaged will tell you something. And children's books have a lot of fundamental building blocks of any key story. They will have human aspects. They will teach you something. They'll show you something. And so when I'm thinking of a story, I go through a little checklist in my head. I say to myself, okay, I've got the client's voice being quoted in it. I always try and get a second voice, so either a customer, or sometimes I take some tweets off Twitter, just to tell the other side of the story. I try and get an expert involved. I try and have a strong image and a unique presence. If I have those 5 things as a high 5 of a story, then I know it's more likely going to work. And sometimes I think about it and say, what children's story is this like? And if it sounds a bit like an ugly duckling story, then so there's something that wasn't beautiful and became beautiful. I'll think things like, okay, so part of the story I might not tell if I'm translating it back into a children's story. And that often reveals elements that are missing.
The one question from the audience side, just for interest, what makes women better storytellers than men? And how do women leverage this in the marketplace, given the dynamic economic inequality?
It's an interesting question because it implies that women are better storytellers. I'm not necessarily sure they are. I think what makes a good storyteller is probably enjoying telling stories, enjoying hearing stories more than anything else, and even better if you read them. I think being female, you're probably, if we're looking at sort of historical evolutionary notions, we're more social. We were evolved to survive almost through communication, not brute strength. So there's an argument there that our ability to communicate with others is potentially more difficult. And that helps me a lot. I chat to everyone. I chat to strangers everywhere. There's no project I've ever worked on that I haven't roped some stranger that I met years ago into helping. The robotic handbag I made, I was speaking to some people at a conference, and they said, oh, we know a robotics firm, we can make it for you. The chocolate bathroom, I was the owner of a concert that the company I went to. I was at a conference and I made this solid chocolate bath, but I actually had no images for it. And someone said, oh, I know someone who works with CGI. But if I hadn't just been chatting to strangers, I wouldn't have got that information. So you could argue that that's being right. There's absolutely nothing to recommend I think the key thing, if you're looking to evolve into gender inequality, is do your very best to be the best in the room, and know when that room then there are some battles you can win, and some battles you have to fight on. There's certainly been times where I've chosen to be in a different room and fight a different battle. We're very much inclined to try and change the viewpoints of people who are biased and those who are biased and proud to be biased. But actually, the best people who can convert are the people who are unconsciously biased, by being very gentle and very kind and highlighting when they're being gender biased. I'll give you an example. I've told this story before, so forgive me if you've heard it, but I remember going into a meeting and we walked in and the client ordered tea off me just a few years ago. So I went and made the tea and I came back in, I put the tray down and my team were already in the room. I said, I've made the tea, my job is my specialty is PR and SEO, but I've done my very best with it. And the guy went so red because he was embarrassed. He had presumed because I was young and female that I was the SEO specialist with B2C. And he wasn't being everyone, the majority of the industry was male and old at the time that I knew. He was actually being statistically accurate, and I could have been really mean to him about it and really rude, but I actually made him laugh, and we all ended up laughing. I guarantee you he never made that mistake again. It made him to laugh. The human logic centers of our brain shut down and learn how to stick to adverse emotion. If you really want to change one's mind, make it happen.
Thank you so much for your energetic answers for all the questions.